Welcome back to CMS-Connected, everyone. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn, alongside, to my left, as always, Mr. Scott Liewehr. And we're live at the Internet Reloaded event at the Hyatt Regency Boston Harbor. And today's show, like we said earlier, we are in fact going to be talking about why is no one talking about the employee journey. Now, the employee journey mapping is every bit as important as the customer journey mapping. It needs to be focused on before you can get the customer journey right. Now, employee journey mapping will encourage you to ask yourself and investigate some important questions, such as, what are people who work for you saying about your company? What is your employer brand? And what are you doing to attract the right people? So, Scott, before we introduce our guests, quick question for you. Where does employee journey map begin? Your thoughts?
Boy, well, I think about employee journey as multiple journeys, many journeys, right? And so every journey has a different start and a different end, just like as a journey does. But I think certainly from the very first time that you're onboarding someone and you're starting to understand them, and that's when you're first inspiring your culture, all the way through to all their engagement with the organization. I think it's really right to talk about this, as we've said in many times when we've talked about customer experience, is so much of the time your customer's experience with your brand is very much via one of your employees. So I think this is really helpful.
All right, so Scott and I could talk all day about this. Not really, we're more focused on the customer. So let's bring in people that know what they're talking about when it comes to the employee journey. We welcome into the conversation two extremely knowledgeable guests on the topic of the employee journey, Rachel Butts and Jeff Willinger. Big round of applause for these two. Excellent. Great to have you guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us today here on CMS Connected. Quick, give me the cliff notes. For the folks that don't know you, we'll start with you, Rachel. Give us a little background on you.
So my name is Rachel Butts, and I am the Program Manager of Internal Communications at Children's Health, the 7th largest pediatric healthcare system in the nation. And we are honored to make life better for children every day in the North Texas area.
Excellent. And Jeff?
That pales in comparison to Rachel's mission. I just create digital workplaces for companies. I'm very passionate about building cultures of collaboration throughout the country. I work for a company called RightPoint. I live in Chicago, but I'm on the road maybe 120 nights a year, seeing a lot of you amazing people. And thanks for having us.
Excellent. Great. No, honestly, it was great to have you. And to be honest with you, these guys are clearly characters. There's no question about that. I talked to both of them in the hallway, saw our emails going back and forth as we were getting ready for. There's no shortage of personality on this stage. I promise you that for sure. So let's get kind of right into the employee journey. So, Rachel, the customer journey is well documented. It's discussed, debated over and over and over. I mean, I talk about it almost on a daily basis. Now, but not much is actually said about the employee journey. Now, walk us through the actual journey itself and kind of speculate to me as to why it seems always to take a back seat to the customer journey.
So like we talked about, at the intro, the journey can begin at a lot of different places. And really the crux of any journey is that experiences create attitudes that then create behaviors that give us outcomes. And so the employee experience is really just a series of experiences that the employee takes and analyzes, and then that creates their willingness and energy to produce behaviors that generate outcomes. And I would even argue, like we talked about earlier, the employee journey, I don't even think begins with onboarding. I think it really begins with the first time an applicant reads a job post and says, oh that's me. Like, I need this job and they need me and this is gonna be amazing. And their experience from applying through the job, maybe speaking with a recruiter, the phone interview, all of that are experiences that will feed into the employee journey. What do you think, Jeff?
I feel like we need a flow chart for that answer. That was just, I feel like I need a PowerPoint slide with some kind of long arrow, and because you really described it, point on. And if we were playing buzzword bingo, I would throw in the word, it has a lot to do with culture right off the bat. I'm sure if we interviewed folks that were at RightPoint before they were there, during and after, they'd probably have, maybe the exact same opinion or the same opinion. So thinking about what it is that brings them there and what it is to keep them there and then hopefully never leave. What is it that's going to make the employee really want to stay to continue that journey at whatever organization they're at?
So when we talk about customer experience, we talk about how difficult it is there's the notion of customer experience management. How hard is it then to manage an experience which is in someone's basically head? How hard is it to manipulate that? Given that it's employees, is it easier in any way to kind of manipulate the employee experience to improve it? or to have people have a better perception so that your outcomes are better?
So I build intranets, I build extranets, .coms, my personal passion is intranets, right? The employees, how do we drive engagement? How do we drive adoption? Building out a roadmap before we get started. And when I look at most companies, they put all their money into external, right? They want that customer experience, they want to bring customers in, but they don't realize that having a great intranet is really going to be the secret sauce to building out a great culture. And I see what companies are paying for a .com website versus what they want to pay for an internal site. They generally, and you guys know, people that are in corporate communications and marketing, the budgets go to the .com, not necessarily for the intranet. So our jobs as corporate communicators is to show value, right? Get, as new employees come in, the millennials, even some of the Gen Xers, what's going to keep them there, right? So our jobs is to figure that out and really build on that.
So my question to you is, when I look at that, when I hear, all the money goes to the .com, to the front-facing site, not to the internal site, from someone that's been on a few different companies, that's been a part of a few different intranets, and literally saw nobody take part in that, how do you sell that then? How do you sell the fact that, no, an intranet's where you need to also put money? Because to me, from an external person that's really, never had buy-in, never used it all that often, how do you pitch that to say, well, this is how you do it, and you need to spend money here?
I've sat at Fortune 500 companies where they had a CEO that was in his late 40s, and he'd show me, this is what this is how we communicate, and he opened up his computer, and he had, I think it was Outlook 2003 or something, like, it was a really outdated Outlook, or maybe it was even Lotus Notes. It was really just wonky looking, and he was proud of it. And so I tell this story all the time. I know I've been talking to a lot of you. I tell stories about how I like to eat a lot. And the reason why I like to, well, everyone knows why I like to eat a lot, but I run marathons. And the only reason why I run marathons is because I like to eat a lot. So I see value in it. So if people don't see value in coming to the intranet, they're never going to go there. So back to your question, you have to show some kind of ROI. You need to, some milestones, some justifications. And again, answer the question. I know everyone in the crowd could answer it. What's in it for me as the end user? So I see value in running because I like to eat so much. You guys, if there's no value in going to the intranet, it's just going to be another one of those places, oh, I have to go there.
And I think you have the opportunity to tell your employees every day what you think about them by the places you give them to visit. And so if you give them an outdated place to go or someplace that's hard to find things, you tell your employee subconsciously, if you do your job, that's awesome, but we're really not going to set you up super well. And so you have organizations have a huge opportunity to create a really welcoming environment for employees that are going to build kind of like a confidence cycle for them, because they know that they can go where the organization gives them to go to get the things that they need.
So how about expectations? Anyone's experience is certainly based on their expectations. It's based on both the perception of actual experiences and the expectations that they walked in with. Given the changing workforce and the expectations that are being set, not because of where they worked at their last company, right? That's not necessarily where their expectations are being set. The expectations are being set because they've got the power in their phone to go and now do Amazon Now or whatever it's called, and within 30 minutes I can have anything delivered to my house or wherever I am. I was at a Cub Scout camp this weekend and people had pizza delivered to it. Right? It's awesome from the phone. So expectations are constantly rising. Is it the same? Our employee expectations are constantly rising, and does that make this gap, this division between where that 40-something-year-old, which is not old, by the way, I'm 40-something, CEO was in terms of his expectations and what he's trying to provide versus what the folks are coming in and expecting? Does that make that even harder to fill?
I think that in any type of evolution, right, we're talking about the journey, I'm a big crawl, walk, run guy. So you can't expect to
Hope you don't
just...
crawl marathons.
No. Trust me, on that mile 26 I am.
You were that guy in Boston a couple days ago that took 8 hours. Okay.
Hey, you know what? At least he did it, right? Absolutely. So I always think, sort of like running a marathon, right? When I ran my first marathon, I just didn't go out there and run 26.2. I ran 1 mile, 2 miles, and somehow I slugged my way, tweeted, Facebooked my way through 26.2 miles. Same exact thing when building out an intranet. You just can't expect you're going to build something and there's going to be adoption. You have to give them a reason to go there, get some quick wins. whatever it is. Usually most organizations, it's search, right? They can never find anything. Let's make search amazing, whatever amazing is to that firm, right? Everyone's got different definitions of what that looks like.
And I don't know that organizations have ever really matched the consumer experience before. And so it's sort of a foregone conclusion that what I can do at home is not what I'm going to be able set up to do at work. And so I think organizations have a competitive advantage were they ever to invest in that to, you'd really want to work for a company that you could access just like you can your online banking or your social connections, however that is. I think it's an interesting proposition to recruit top talent to even come close to the expectations you have as a individual.
Sure. All right, and Jeff, talk about the crux of the division in thinking. We want customers to love us, obviously, but we want employees to produce for us at the end of the day. Talk to that.
So there's definitely, that's usually the big disconnect within organizations, right? You want them to produce, but you also want to make it, I talked about this in my last session, it's got to be easy. If it's not easy, they're never going to do it. So I talk about user experience in just about everything, and especially when it comes to being an employee at a company. It's got to be easy. I'm not talking about a challenging job. I'm talking about easy, whether it's a commute or whether it's working internally, whatever it is, it's got to be easy. So that's usually why there's a big disconnect within employees, because I see it just not being a great work experience for them.
About the user experience at the end of the day. So, Rachel, let's go to the most critical steps to employee mapping. I know, obviously, we talked about the flow chart the whole way through, but what's the most important parts that you would like to focus on, you think you should focus on?
To know that you know what you know is the most important thing that you can do. I think so. So earlier...
Yeah, that's definitely true.
To know what you know, you know.
Thank you.
Got it.
Hashtag, I'll own that. In a session that we had earlier in the conference today, we talked about the difference between surveys and data. And you can think that you know what your employees are going through. I think a lot of leaders have that kind of, I know what's happening on the floor, but one of the ways that I have tried to find out the truth of the employee journey at Children's Health is I shadow an ER nurse. I spend 8 hours in the ICU. I stay overnight and follow a housekeeper so that I know where they using technology, where are they having questions that they don't know how to answer, how are they, is their mood changing from the time that they come into work to the time that they go out of work because they had to battle something to accomplish the thing they're supposed to. And so it's kind of old school, it takes a lot of time, it's not something that most of us, with all of the boxes we have to check as communicators, but I think the way to make it most successful and relevant. And you also create friends and advocates along the way so that when I am able to be part of a project to help improve the employee experience, and they see, oh, Rachel's a part of it. Mm-hmm. She hung out with me for 8 hours, and she didn't do it to report on me or anything. She just wanted to know more about me. They're likely to adopt. And so, yeah.
So when we talk about customer experience, we think about it as a kind of a hierarchy of needs, wherein the kind of most basic need is to have the product or service that I'm paying for actually do what it says it's supposed to do, right? If it doesn't do that, then I don't care how seamless it is, and I don't care how delightful any part of the experience is. If the hotel doesn't have my room, I don't really care how clean your hotel is, nor how great the ambiance, right? So therefore, we basically talk about creating all of these maps of all the different journeys that a customer might go through and pick out where are the things that are completely falling down so that you have no more broken experiences. Is that the same advice that you'd use internally? Like, you just mentioned a whole lot of journeys and a whole lot of, so where does a company start? What do they fix?
So I think that's where having the connections with the frontline staff is going to be important as well. You understand the pain points, where the questions that they're looking, they're going to technology and it's not serving them, so they're calling, well, I know that this person knows that person, and if I can get to them, then I can find it. Yep. Is incredibly helpful, I think.
If you could even find that person.
Right, which is, and so that's why people finders tend to be, and are, tend to be the most used applications on an intranet, even if the intranet is not functioning, sure. People are looking for people there.
Facebook at work.
Yep. Another way to go at it, if you're just overwhelmed with the situation, is to start with your strategic goals. I mean, there's an entire industry of industrial engineering that is on process improvement, and if you can work back from your strategic goals, find out why you're not, just knocking them out of the park, I think you'll find a lot of pain points for employees on collaboration or connection or having the information they just need.
So one of the things I want to actually talk about is the generational gap as far as the end user, because to me, I think that's something that's actually interesting. You have your millennials that 20-something, and then obviously you have someone usually more executive level, but can be in the older. How does that change the perspective, especially when we're first starting out? What are your thoughts on the generational gap when using the internet?
I think I'm going to do a little case study, mini case study with a real old-fashioned firm with a lot of salespeople they're a liquor distributor. In the old days, there used to be an admin that would walk around at the end of the day with an Excel spreadsheet and all the sales guys sitting at their desk, and they'd look at it and see their sales numbers. Then in the next phase, that same admin no longer has to walk around. She sends them an email with an attachment, and I love attachments. This is not me, though. And then in the Web 2.0, that same admin, guess what? There's no more email, there's no more attachments. They put it on their intranet, and guess what? When you log in, it knows who you are, what your territory is, if you're a sales manager, if you're a sales rep, or if you're the director of sales, and you could skew it however you want. So now I have to go to the intranet to get the same exact sales data. And guess what? These guys in their 50s and 60s and women that are out there pounding the pavement, they just adopt to it or else they don't get their sales numbers. And I've got to tell you, the adoption is basically like 99%. It's ridiculous. No kicking and screaming. They see value in it. And guess what? When they went to the internet, they're like, wow, they see corporate news, they see little polls, they see new hires, promotions. And so it didn't happen overnight, but so the generation gap, it's sort of, with the right user experience and design, there is none.
That's interesting, and I would imagine it's...
The show's over.
Mic drop. I'd imagine, too, that it's even that much more difficult because that generational gap that you're talking about, if you think about it, typical business, maybe this is even true in healthcare, but a typical business is your kind of youngest staff tends to be the most client-facing. So whether you're in a consulting business like even RightPoint, you tend to have the ones who are on-site at the client all the time tends to be the younger staff, and the older, mature part of it or management, they're back at the office sort of a thing. So the gap is even wider, I would imagine, in that case.
Definitely. So I love this conversation. Generational expectations that come, it's really not about how old you are, it's about what happened to you when you were young that dictated your experience of life and your...
It sounds like an episode of Criminal
Minds. Don't bring up, I need a couch for that. Don't bring up my...
Well, okay, I'll keep it very specific to our conversation then. So the different generations, whereas it comes to expectations of technology and access to information at work, the millennial generation, and in our specific situation, we are 40% millennial. And that, because we are a teaching facility, and a lot of young nurses are attracted to pediatrics. And it's even more than just the way that they can access the things they work. It's how they express themselves and what they need to feel like they're doing a good job. Recognition and reinforcement changes across the generations. Or boomer may be more comfortable with the annual work analysis and a review process that's a standard time, whereas a Gen Xer may want more quarterly conversations because Generation X tends to be more connected across the people spectrum, they're friendship-based. Whereas a millennial, because of the rise of social media and the new definition of sharing and liking and friending and all those things simply mean, I like things because I acknowledge it. If my sister posted something and I want her to know that I'm paying attention to her, so I like something whether I do or not. That different interpretation of validation and recognition has significantly changed what a millennial is looking for in the workplace because their life is telling them that they're good based on this. Mm-hmm. And the conversations aren't necessarily built in, especially with an organization that has leadership that's in a boomer generation. And so I think it's awareness of keeping employees engaged, whether that's through technology or in the person-to-person interaction, and deciding whether or not you're going to fulfill those needs.
So Jeff, does that make it easier then? Because I would think, I mentioned that the expectation gap might be wider, but adoption might be even easier given the kind of changeover of staff. Is it looking up for adoption given the kind of nuances?
It is, but to Rachel's point real quick on that whole liking thing and validation, and I have got 3 daughters. and I encouraged them to go for quality over quantity. We would have contests, who has more likes on their Instagram or their Facebook feed or their tweets. I'm like, just quality over quantity, but yet, they need the validation. So unfortunately, we live in that age until the adults tell our kids it's not, we don't care. And I could see why a lot of people drop out of social networks. But to the adoption, it does make it easier.
Now, I'm going to stop there. I want to go back to that because you go to a lot of CEOs and we talk about quality over quantity. And I remember being in a boardroom meeting and having the CEO of the company say, why didn't we have more likes on this internally? So that still does happen. I mean, talk to that a little bit.
So I have a theory. I think the expression of self in some cultures is scary. I think that if you go to an organization that has a big meeting and they have a question and answer section and nobody raises their hand, it's because they don't feel confident expressing their questions or doubts or concerns in a public forum. And social collaboration in the workplace is very similar. I mean, if you're not having active conversations in real life, that's not going, all digital workplaces do is take what's happening in real life and move it online. And so if you don't have the culture that supports that, adoption and engagement I see as two different things, right? Because a millennial is more used to updating platform, Facebook updates, and we all figure out what we're going to do now. Like I can now love something instead of just like it, and I just get used to that.
Wow.
So,
I could wow it too.
You can wow it. You can cry. Lots of all the emojis. And so adoption of it, like actually using the technology and figuring it out is kind of, I think, a millennial strength. But the engagement, the liking thing socially is not that they don't know how to do it. I'm just afraid to express myself. So I think culture plays into that.
And in organizations, the big question that I get is, we want to do anonymous posting. I hate anonymous posting anywhere. But then again, to your point, Rachel, a lot of people are just going to be afraid to post, and therefore they won't. So I think I saw the statistic to that point about the emojis and the Facebook and how many people were using it. I guess I was one of the top 10,000 people in the world to use those emojis. Thank you very much. It's a little
Put that on your
resume. And the first guy over 40 on Snapchat. Two very amazing claims to fame.
I absolutely love it. I think we'll probably wrap it on that note. That is phenomenal. Big round of applause. Rachel Butts, Jeff Willinger, thank you guys so very much for coming on. Appreciate it. And for folks out there that want to get in touch, Rachel, how can they reach you?
My Twitter handle is @rbutts1981.
Jeff?
J Willie, JWillie. There you go.
Big Willie style, I love it. All right, for Rachel Butts, Jeff Willinger, Tyler Pyburn, we'll be right back here on CMS-Connected.
Your job is to cut through the noise. To succeed, you need to reach out to your target audiences in real time with messages that speak to them. You can't let technology get in the way of your brand. That's the spirit. First Spirit is a powerful solution that helps you effectively communicate and engage with your target audience. Get an awesome ROI. Success in the market means your message got through to the right people at the right time in the right way. And that's why you need First Spirit. Get started with digital marketing. Visit www.espirit.com now.